Hello, brothers and sisters. Hey, thanks for joining me today. Today, let's talk about the shocking and tragic terrorist attack in front of the mosque in Manchester. So we've got this footage here. Looks like it's out of somebody's car who was across the street. And the alleged perpetrator looks like he's standing outside of the mosque, but he appears he's locked out because he's just standing there. So let's watch this. So I suppose everyone fled and they locked the doors on him, thank goodness, so he couldn't do any more damage. So let's read about this and see what we know. It's early yet. This only happened maybe 6 hours ago. Probably not a lot of information out there yet, and a lot of it is likely to be wrong. So let's see what this story has to say. Pictured, Manchester Synagogue terrorist with suspected suicide belt who killed at least two before being shot by police. Good. I'm glad the police got him. I feel sorry for the two people that got caught up in this. This is the terrorist with a suspected suicide belt who killed at least two people outside of Manchester Synagogue before being shot by police. A car was driven into a crowd and a man stabbed at 9:31 a.m. on Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. Lawrence Taylor, head of counterterrorism policing, said the attack had been confirmed as terrorism. Yeah, somebody who drives into the front of a mosque and stabs somebody, I'm thinking that's terrorism for sure. He said police had made two further arrests and knew the attacker's identity but would not release the information at this stage. Greater Manchester Police said three other victims were in serious condition after the attack outside of Heaton Park Hebrew Congregation Synagogue. The force has now confirmed the suspect is also dead after previously being unable to approach his body due to suspicious items on his person. Yeah, I'm sure they had to wait for the bomb squad. A picture of the alleged attacker showed a man with a beard and dark clothing standing outside the synagogue with unidentified objects strapped to his waist. He can also be seen holding something in his hand. Bomb disposal experts are at the scene, but Greater Manchester Police said a loud noise heard earlier in the day was officers gaining entry to his vehicle as a precaution. Earlier, hero Rabbi Daniel Walker barricaded the worshippers inside the building after the suspect crashed into the gate and began stabbing anyone and everyone. Thank goodness the rabbi had the presence of mind and was in a position where he could lock the doors so this lunatic couldn't do more damage. One witness described him moving from victim to victim in a robotic manner, like he had a job to do, targeting anyone who wore a kippah. He then tried to force his way inside before being shot dead by armed police at 9:38. So 7 minutes? This started at 9:31, so good on the police. I think 7 minutes is very good response time for something like this and neutralize the threat. A senior security source who worked in armed policing for decades told Daily Mail the man's suicide belt looked real. Yeah, if you see a guy who has a suspected suicide belt on, you should just shoot him. Don't try to talk to him. Don't try to negotiate. Just shoot him. I applaud the police for doing what was necessary in this situation. Video shared on social media appeared to show armed police officers pointing guns at a man laying on the ground as one screamed to onlookers, "Everybody else, get back. If you're not involved, move back. Get away. He has a bomb. Go away." The man on the ground was seen starting to get up before gunshots sounded, and he fell back down at one point. The camera panned around to show a victim lying motionless outside the synagogue gates with blood around their head. A street on White House Avenue, around a quarter of a mile from the synagogue on Middleton Road, saw intense police activity this afternoon, with two men seen being led away in handcuffs. Sir Keir Starmer said additional police assets will be deployed at synagogues across the country following attack. Good. Yeah. And here's the thing, guys. I'll stop right here for some commentary. The laws in the UK need to change. They need to be, maybe they don't need to be the same as America, but they need to be more than they are today. Thank goodness in America we have the Second Amendment, which is the right for the people to bear arms. And so people can effectively mount their own self-defense. Notice, this guy attacked the synagogue. It's a known place of worship. Schools, synagogues, these are places they like to attack. Because people like to attack them, we need better security. And I argue that we need people with guns to be that security, because it still took the police 7 minutes to get here. where if there was armed security on the premises, then that could have dealt with this situation much quicker and you'd have less loss of life. And I know there's no political will in the UK to rearm the populace, but could we at least rearm private security? Because I do believe, tell me in the comments, that it's against the law for private individual security groups to carry arms as well. You really have to be approved police or military, government agents of some sorts. So can we station police officers, armed police officers, securing schools and churches? I know this might sound crazy to people in the UK, but I believe the right to a proper self-defense is a basic human right. And if you cannot arm yourself, you cannot have proper self-defense. I think the government really needs to take another look at that. And now, me personally, I like the way America does it, where private citizens can carry arms, because security and the police cannot always be there. But in this case, I think we need armed security at large venues. We need to put them at concerts, like Ariana Grande concerts. Wasn't there a problem at one of those a couple of years ago? We need armed security for schools, and we need armed security for churches and other soft targets. Government buildings have armed security, right? So our politicians all have security, but the populace can't? Something just doesn't, that's just not right. A street on White House Avenue around a quarter of a mile from the synagogue on Middleton Road saw intense public activity this afternoon, with two men seen being led away in handcuffs. Sir Keir Starmer said additional police assets will be deployed at synagogues across the country following the attack. Good. The Prime Minister has arrived in the UK after flying home early from a meeting of European leaders in Denmark in order to chair a COBRA meeting following the incident. He said he was appalled at the attack, adding, "The fact that this has taken place on Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, makes it all the more horrific." The king said he and the Queen were deeply shocked and saddened to learn of the horror, especially on such a significant day for the Jewish community. Charles, in a message issued by Buckingham Palace, praised the swift actions of the emergency services, while the Prince and Princess of Wales said their thoughts were with victims and families. It is too bad that they weren't able to capture the man alive to see if he had any co-conspirators, but as I've said on other videos, safety trumps all. We can't have our police or other members of the populace go into harm to capture this guy when he might have a bomb. Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, said one of the victims was a security guard who had been stabbed. If that security guard had had a gun, this might have ended differently. Speaking outside New Scotland Yard, Assistant Commissioner Taylor said this morning an appalling attack took place on Crumpsall in Manchester. 2 people have died. The attacker has been shot dead by the police. We believe we know their identity, but for safety reasons at the scene, we're unable to confirm at this stage. 3 other members of the public are in serious condition. We have also made 2 further arrests, and based on what we know, counterterrorism policing has declared this a terrorist incident. Counterterrorism police are working with officers in Greater Manchester to investigate the attack. Mr. Taylor added, "Those who have been killed, injured at the forefront of our minds, of their families, friends, and all those who love them, and the attack on Jewish community today on Yom Kippur is devastating." Police were called to the Heaton Park Hebrew Congregation Synagogue on Middleton Road, Crumpsall, at 9:31 a.m. by a member of the public, stating he had witnessed a car being driven towards members of the public and one man had been stabbed. The force said it declared a major incident at 9:37. And on the stabbing, criminals and lunatics always find weapons to use, so banning knives does nothing. They will always be able to find knives. Or if they can't find a knife, they'll use a car and run you over. But bad people will always find weapons, so it's a fool's errand banning weapons. You need to actually address the security concerns because the weapons exist, and then address the underlying causes of why people are using those weapons. Going after the actual weapons, again, is a fool's errand. Salford, Royal Fairfield, General Rochdale Infirmary, and Royal Oldham Hospitals are all on lockdown after the incident. So here's a picture of him through the gate. He's got something around his belt, can't really tell from this picture. The man does look to be of Middle Eastern descent, so pure speculation on my part, but I think there's a high probability he's a migrant. So it's going to be interesting to find out if he's in the country illegally and what his history is. And he's attacking a Jewish synagogue, so I don't think it's a stretch to say he's likely a Muslim migrant. Oh, here's some more footage. Let's watch this.
Everybody else, get back! If you're not involved, move! Somebody's everybody has a way!
He's got a bomb. He's got a bomb. Mate, he's got a...
All right, so in that video, it appeared there was at least one person blurred out on the ground. That might be the perpetrator. Don't know why he was on the ground. It looked like this was the point where he was getting up. The police were telling members of the public to get away, and a member of the public said something like, he's got a bomb. They shot the man right after this as he was getting up because they thought he had a bomb. So I applaud the police. This was very dangerous. They were in fear for their lives also. Good job, boys, on this one. I'm not going to complain about the police shooting a terrorist. This bomb disposal, checking the man out. Looks like they sent a robot in initially to make sure it was safe. Yeah, bomb disposal folk have like the worst job in the world. Looks like this was the car that he used to ram the people outside the synagogue. 9:31, car rams into worshipers outside the synagogue. Driver stabs several people right outside of the doors, then attempts to enter. But luckily, there was enough time that they were able to get the doors locked on the madman. And then armed police arrive 6 minutes later, and then 1 minute later, they shoot him because he appears to be wearing a bomb vest. Paramedics get there 1 minute later. I think the official response on this one was good. I'm not going to complain about anything the police did here from what I've seen. And then armed police search the property at White House Avenue, 5 minutes walk north of the synagogue. They arrest 2 men. So perhaps the person had identification connecting him to that home, that building, and then they went in there. Appears the rabbi has some blood on his clothes. Here's the home. These look like real police. These don't look like the little girls that I did a video on the other day. These are the guys you want in the police force. They're doing a hard job. They need to be fit. Heaton Park Hebrew Congregation is a large Ashanti Orthodox synagogue that was formally founded in 1935. Karam Rafiq, who was driving past the building this morning, described seeing a knifeman going from victim to victim in a robotic manner. The tech firm manager, 35, told the Mail, I was driving into work this morning, and further down the road I saw a car, which was on the same side as mine, drive into someone on the pavement. Initially, I thought it was an accident, and the driver had lost control for whatever reason. But he then got out and stabbed the man who was lying on the ground. Wow. This happened directly outside the synagogue. The knife man walked through the front gates and stabbed at least 2 other men. I would describe him as an Asian man, and he was going for anyone who was Jewish. The men he stabbed were all wearing the kippah. He was quiet. There was no shouting from what I could hear, nor any religious slogans or chants. He was very robotic in his actions, like he had a job to do, and he was just focusing on doing it. The entrance to the synagogue was locked shut. I could see him trying to get in. He was banging on the door, and at one point looked to try and kind of jimmy open the door. People were trying to distract him by throwing stuff like plants and pots, but nobody was going near him. I'm glad members of the public got involved. It's too bad none of them were armed and could have shot him. That, I think, was because round his waist he had what looked like a belt containing explosives. Whether they were real or designed purely to intimidate and cause fear, I can't say. But the police were on the scene really quickly. Armed police surrounded the synagogue. At first, he looked to be complying, but then 2 gunshots rang out. I got a little closer, and there was a 3rd gunshot that proved fatal. He slumped to the floor. The guy he'd hit with the car and stabbed, first of all, was lying motionless on the ground. There was a pool of blood where he was lying, and to me, at this point, he looked to have died from his injuries. There were people peering out of the synagogue windows, and they were afraid for their lives. It was an incredibly frightening incident. Yeah, it's got to be crazy. You go to church, and then somebody attacks a church. Crazy. It was an incredibly frightening incident to witness, and I'm still shaken up. I bet he was. He watched all this. This has got to be traumatic for anyone. One delivery driver, who gave his name as Gareth, described stopping to see what happened when he saw a car had crashed by the side of the road. Next minute, we were held back in a little bit of traffic, and we could see a car had crashed. So we just thought it were a normal collision. We got a bit closer. We seen a guy bleeding out on the floor. He was just basically unconscious on the floor, presumed obviously dead. And then literally there was another guy in front of the car. He just lay on the floor. We couldn't really see him. And then there were a few people who stood outside in the road. Somebody shouted something in the school or synagogue or whatever it was. And then as we looked over, the guy had a knife, and he was just stabbing the window trying to get in. And then within seconds, the police arrived. They gave him a couple of warnings. He didn't listen, so they opened fire. He went down on the floor, and then he started getting back up, and then they shot him again. A woman who described herself as a religious Jew who lives next door to the synagogue said as soon as the suspect got out of the car, he started stabbing anyone near him. Shava Lewin said, I was outside, I heard a banging sound, and I thought it might be a firework. My husband went outside, then ran back inside. There's been a terrorist attack. I spoke to someone who said she was driving and saw a car driving erratically and it crashed into the gates of the synagogue. She thought maybe he had a heart attack. The second he got out of the car, he started stabbing anyone near him. He went for the security guard and tried to break into the synagogue. He was in the courtyard. Someone barricaded the door. Everyone is in utter shock. I bet. Here's some more footage. Let's watch this. Police officer getting his gear out of a civilian vehicle. Yeah, they're treating this as a serious terrorist incident. Good for them. One man who did not want to be named told the Mail he was knocking on doors on his street close to the synagogue to stop people from going to worship after hearing the news. He said, I knew that those who are really religious would not even answer their landline phones today because it's the holiest day. We're supposed to stay at home and pray. I wanted to warn them not to go up to the synagogue because most would not be watching the news. Yeah, so they wouldn't know this happened. He said he was absolutely shocked by events and said Muslims live cheek by jowl with Jewish people in Crumpsall. A security source who for decades worked in armed policing, protecting the royal family and government ministers, said the suspect's suicide belt may have been genuine. He said suicide belts are usually homemade, making it impossible to tell immediately. Police simply can't assess if it's real in a split second, and therefore GMP officers were right to shoot to kill in case it went off, the source said. 100% agree. This is a tactic by Al-Qaeda and ISIS. We saw the London Bridge attackers wearing what look like suicide vests, but they will only find out if the belt is real when it goes off. Looking at the image of the suspect, he appears to have canisters around his waist and something is strapped to his chest. These could be filled with explosives and packed with marbles and ball bearings. The armed officers at the synagogue today were left with a split-second decision that had to be to neutralize him as soon as he moved. What if he got inside the building or ran around the corner and detonated in front of a school? That would be on the police. If he blew himself up there and then, the police and the public would be in mortal danger. He had to be shot, and specifically shot between the nose and the Adam's apple, so his brain can't react enough to detonate any device. You can't negotiate. You can't shoot him in the legs or talk him down. People say so are naive. You have to kill someone in these circumstances. This person had already crossed the line. He'd driven into a synagogue, stabbed people, and appears to have a suicide belt. Yeah, 100% right. People who think police and the military should be shooting people in the arms and the legs and the hand, they've been watching too many movies. It isn't the easiest thing to shoot someone, I'm sure. You need to deal with them as quickly and efficiently as possible, and you don't shoot wound, you shoot to stop the threat. While the officer's decision to shoot will be pored over for years, in some cases, they were right to act. A second source said the suspect's body will be inspected by bomb disposal teams. Officers will ensure that any mobile phones on his body are disabled and are using technology able to determine if there is a timer connected to the vest. His body will also be scanned for nails, ball bearings, and other items that could be packed into the vest. Yeah, because sometimes they set these things off by phone. So here's a statement by the Manchester mayor. Let's go ahead and listen to this.
Serious incident, I have to say. It is in the area that you mentioned, and I would say to people listening, firstly, to avoid the area because it is a serious incident. But at the same time, I can give some reassurance immediately to people that the immediate danger appears to be over. And Greater Manchester Police have dealt with it very quickly, and has been amazing support from, I think, members of the public and security at the location. But what I will do, Mike, is give more factual information as the hot seat develops, if that's okay. But I can obviously give people that immediate reassurance not to worry too much. The situation has been dealt with very effectively by those on site and by Greater Manchester Police.
I think that was a good statement by the mayor to calm the public, let everyone know we've got things under control. The threat's been dealt with. It's serious, but we've done what's necessary. A major incident, and police have enacted Plato, the national code word used by emergency services when responding to a marauding terror attack. Bomb disposal robot. The bomb disposal crew, their uniforms are a little different, so perhaps they called in the army to deal with this. I don't know. An SAS helicopter. Blue Thunder. Shortly after the attack, the area surrounding the synagogue was swamped by dozens of police vehicles, along with fire and ambulance crews and SAS helicopter Blue Thunder, part of an airborne counterterrorism initiative. The surrounding streets were cordoned off, with more police cars and vans, sirens blaring, racing down neighboring roads. A short distance away from the synagogue, police officers armed with H&K machine guns stood guard at the head of the path between houses leading up to the back of the synagogue. Members of the Jewish community have been gathering around the police cordon, with some of them in tears. A number of black, unmarked police 4x4 vehicles and vans carrying plainclothes officers with face coverings were seen leaving the area of the incident at speed. One victim was seen next to a Kia Picanto, which appeared to have been damaged by a collision. The vehicle was taxed and passed its MOT around 8 weeks ago. Immediately after the attack, one Jewish man said his wife and daughter and other members of the congregation were still inside the synagogue. There's no place for Jews in Britain anymore. It's over. Yeah, it does seem that there's been a massive amount of anti-Semitism in the UK in recent years. The U.S. too. And I think it's really come to a head because of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Innocent people are being attacked. It is spilling over into Western cities, unfortunately. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood said, "I'm horrified by the news of the attack at the synagogue in Manchester today on the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. My first thoughts are with the victims, our brave police, and emergency services." The British Muslim Trust described the act as despicable and cowardly and said it stands behind the Jewish community. Good. I don't blame all Muslims for this. Unless more information comes out, this was a lunatic, radicalized Muslim, and he might have been part of a larger group. The police need to find that larger group. And all the lunatic extremists, they all need to be in jail or they need to be thrown out of the country. And if they're violent terrorists, the police should shoot them too. There are good people who are just living in the UK. Many of them are UK citizens who just want to take care of their families and do their jobs. But the problem is there are also lunatics out there, and the Muslim community is not doing enough to police its own lunatics. Every group has lunatics. Your own group knows who the lunatics are, and you really need to police your own lunatics. I'm a reporter who has worked in war zones, so I understand what shots sound like, and I realized straight away that they were. Then I heard sirens. Police wouldn't let us out of our flats. They later evacuated us from our flats. They came and knocked on all the doors, told us we had to get out. I saw the rabbi who on this day wears a special white robe. I saw at the bottom of the white robe was blood. Yeah, he probably tried to help one of the victims. Manchester has a Jewish population of more than 30,000, the highest in the UK after London. Policing Minister Sarah Jones was asked whether she had any messages for the Jewish community who may feel very let down after Steer Karmer recognized the state of Palestine. She said, "Well, it's an emerging situation. I can't comment on it beyond that. We are in touch with the police and I'm being kept informed. Anti-Semitism has no place in our society, and we must make sure we're protecting Jewish people against attacks. But this particular situation, I'm not in a position to give more information." Yeah, it's embarrassing for the party because they just recognized Palestine and then this happened. The problem, guys, with recognizing Palestine is Hamas runs Palestine. So you are giving tacit approval of a terrorist organization. And I know not all Palestinians are terrorists. A lot of them are. And a lot of them support Hamas. You can't be against terrorism and be for Hamas and Palestine. To me, they're pretty much the same thing. As long as the people of Palestine keep electing Hamas as their leaders and we have January 6th, this kind of stuff is going to happen. Kemi Badenoch described the incident as a vile and disgusting attack and for the rise in anti-Semitism that we're seeing in our country to be quelled completely. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Phillips said, "I'm appalled not only by this brutal attack, but also the evil that lies behind it." Liberal Democrat leader Sir Ed Davey said he was horrified. One rabbi described the attack as every Jewish person's worst nightmare. Yeah, Rabbi Jonathan Romaine, emeritus rabbi of Maidenhead Synagogue and current head of the Rabbinic Court of Great Britain, said he felt appalled by what had happened. This is every rabbi or every Jewish person's worst nightmare. Not only is this a sacred day, the most sacred in the Jewish calendar, but it's also a time of mass gathering and a time when Jewish community, however religious or irreligious, gathers together. He added, this will obviously heighten fears that many Jews have had that political violence would spill over into religious hatred. Yeah.
The attack in Manchester this morning is absolutely shocking, and all of our thoughts are with those affected. I'm on my way back to London. When I arrive, I will chair an emergency COBRA meeting. I'm already able to say that additional police assets are being deployed to synagogues across the country, and we will do everything to keep our Jewish community safe. I've spoken to Mark Gardner of the CST and Andy Burnham, Mayor of Manchester, and I want to thank the emergency services for the speed of their response.
All right, I think that was an okay statement. I think Andy Burnham, the mayor, gave a better one. I'm appalled by the attack at the synagogue at Crumpsale, said Keir Starmer. The fact that this has taken place on Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, makes it all the more horrific. My thoughts are with the loved ones of all those affected. My thanks to the emergency services and first responders. So he pretty much tweeted out exactly what he said up there. Okay, so here's a map of Manchester of where it was. And it looks like there was a house just down the road where this guy probably came from. Wow. He probably saw Jewish people every day and got angry. Dr. Paul Stott, head of crime and security at Police Exchange, called for a sustained response to anti-Semitism. The targeting of a synagogue and Jews on Yom Kippur points strongly to an anti-Semitic terrorist attack. The challenge the UK faces here is deep and enduring and has gone on for far too long. It now requires a dedicated, sustained response. Yom Kippur is considered the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, is a time when synagogues are usually particularly busy. Dave Rich, the Community Security Trust, a charity that monitors anti-Semitism in the UK, said Yom Kippur is the holiest day. It's very solemn. The synagogues across the country will be full throughout the day. There's always a significant security operation in place between police and the CST across the Jewish community on all major Jewish festivals. In terms of importance in the religious year, he said it's similar to Christmas for Christians, but it is a day of solemnity and fasting rather than celebration. Co-chairman of Northwest Friends of Israel described the incident as a culmination of a tsunami of Jew hatred that the Jewish community had been experiencing since October 7th, 23. Local MP Labor Graham Stringer said he is particularly upset by an attack on the synagogue, which is in his constituency, because he knows some of the congregation by first name. Barrister and TV host Rob Reinder called on other Britons to stand with the Jewish community. He said, on the holiest day of the year, we are attacked at a Manchester synagogue. Our children walk to school behind barbed wire protected by guns, yet some still answer this atrocity. What about? This is my country, the sanctuary my grandfather found after surviving the Holocaust, promising freedom under the rule of law. Today I pray for the victims, thank the brave who responded, and wonder if the promise is fading. A community this small cannot stand alone. If you believe in Britain, wherever you're from or whatever your faith, you must stand with us. Many Jews cannot imagine the future here, and history tells us what follows when that happens. The leader of Manchester City Council said Manchester stands with our Jewish community at this darkest of moments. In a statement, Councillor Bev Craig said, we are all horrified by this shocking and reprehensible attack on members of Manchester's Jewish community on their holiest day. Our thoughts are with those who've been killed and seriously injured, their loved ones, and everyone who's been affected by this incident. Manchester stands with our Jewish community at this darkest of moments and will come together as a city. All right, so it was a long article, but it's an important topic. Unfortunately, the Palestinian-Israeli problem is overflowing into Western cities, with anti-Semitism in the U.S. ramping up since January 6th with protests against Israel. We've been seeing it in the UK for years with rising anti-Semitism. And the Palestinian-Israeli problem just won't seem to go away, and it is stirring things up. And unfortunately, innocents are being impacted by this. And I say again, the only thing I didn't see in here is I call for better security. I call for a change in the law to allow armed civilian security officers. If we don't have enough armed police to guard every school and every place of worship, then these things are going to keep happening at these unguarded places. The most efficient tool for self-defense is a gun. I know there's no political will to rearm the citizenry in the UK, but we need to have armed security to help with this. If that security guard had had a gun, he may have been able to stop this before he was stabbed. I don't know if he's one of the deceased victims, but early in the article said it was one of the security guards was stabbed when he confronted the man. What's it going to take to better secure places? Would this man have needed to get in and blow up his bomb inside the synagogue? Is that what it'll take? So I know people condemn the U.S. for having all the guns, but at least in the U.S., people have the right to self-defense. And if you can't have weapons to use in self-defense, you really don't have a right to self-defense, because criminals and lunatics will always have weapons. So all you do is you disarm the general public. And the police are 7 minutes away. And again, I applaud the police response in this one. All right, so I think my comments are going to be spicy on this one because I know the UK is very much against guns. We will see. Hey, if you like this, like and subscribe. If you don't like it, don't watch me. Thanks. Bye.